Among the most enduring and damaging impacts of Nigeria's oil and gas resource course has been the long, steady decline in the country's agricultural sector. The agricultural sector was once the primary source of government's revenue and foreign exchange earnings, but has suffered from decades of underinvestment, corruption, policy neglect, and lost opportunities. Today, despite the vast agricultural potentials, the country is still net food importer, with a vast majority of Nigerians engaged in agricultural operating at subsistence level. Let's examine Nigeria's evolving agricultural landscape, identifying the major obstacles to economic growth and food security. Well, let's cross over to the United Kingdom, where I'm being joined by a researcher and agribusiness economist. He's Dr. Mathew Ojo. Thank you so much. It's good to have you on the show this new year.
Thank you so much, Tolu. It's nice to be back again, and good afternoon to our viewers at home.
Great. I want us to start this discussion this way, this year. It's a new year, so let's do new things. Now, how can we really take advantage of this vast land that we keep talking about for agricultural development and economic growth in Nigeria? Where is the dislocation? Where did we get it wrong? Because we keep hearing lots of stories, good stories, beautiful stories, even before I was born. But what happened? Where did we miss out?
Yeah, thank you once again. Tolu, you see, there's substantial evidence, okay, or documented proof to show that there's a positive relationship between agricultural development and economic development. So there's really no need to start digging deep. We have substantial evidence to show that there's a positive relationship. Now, what we now need to look at is, how does this come about? How does agricultural development eventually leads to economic development? It's simple, because when your agricultural sector develops, you make social progress, in the sense that it helps in creating employment, it helps in income generation, and then when most of your citizens are employed, they're able to earn income, and then they have something to spend on consumption, and improves the economy. Then you also have raw materials coming from the agricultural sector for the industry to help in developing cottage industries, as well as also providing raw materials in other areas. These are the kind of things that we see when your agricultural sector is developing. So when you put all that together, apart from the fact that it also contributes to your foreign exchange, you're able to export, you're able to earn foreign exchange, and then you have enough to go around everybody within the economy. So when your agricultural sector develops, it automatically translates into economic development, because agriculture is the sole economy you find in the rural area. So when you do that, you have that development, okay, in that aspect. Now, the challenge we've had over time is this. In the developed world, you have, for example, in the United States, where you have less than 10% of the farmers feeding the entire nation, and also you have export going out. But we've not been able to translate what we are doing and encourage technology, such that you bring technology into the agricultural sector in Nigeria to improve and to also increase production. For example, we have always said on times without number, up to 70%, if not more than, of the citizens are into agricultural production or anything that relates to agriculture. And yet we are not able to feed ourselves. That is because if you go to most of the states as at today, Tolu, farmers still use cutlass and hoes. We are not able to transit or bring technology to help, where you have farmers using medium to large scale farm mechanized farm implements to aid production. And that is where we are having issues. So if you have 70% of your citizens employed in the agricultural sector, and we are still not able to feed ourselves, it's because we have not been able to move beyond this traditional means of producing or of operating. However, in recent years, or just a few years back, we've started seeing technology being employed or coming into the agricultural space, mostly because of the young ones that are now coming into agriculture. So that is, for me, a major area where our agriculture has not been able to translate as we should have been seen into economic development. And we are having issues with even food production, food security. So we resort to what? Importing, just like you mentioned in your introductory message. So that is a challenge for now. And unless we're able to go beyond that and go beyond rhetorics, which is the common thing, your government comes out and tells you this is what they want to do. But when it comes to action, you start asking questions. For example, again, look at the national budget for agriculture for 2023, for this year. It is just 1.1% of the entire budget for a nation. So how can you be talking about agricultural development impacting positively on economic development where you don't pay so much attention to funding and ensuring that factors that inhibit growth or inhibit development are addressed as at when due? So this kind of imbalances, this is what we are having, and that is what we've not been able to really leverage upon agricultural development in terms of seeing that translate into economic development as most other nations have been able to.
Indeed. When you listen to your submission, you know that you're talking to a researcher and someone with in-depth knowledge of the agricultural space. But Dr. Ojo, let me follow up with some specifics with regards to technology. In what way can technology really help us achieve food sufficiency in this part of the world? At the time, we heard of the likes of biogenetic crops and all of that. Tell us about it.
Yeah, you see, technology is very important when it comes to you want to improve on what you are doing. So you employ technology. You get better results with less effort, okay? Efficiency and productivity. But let's take it one after the other. In terms of technology, biotechnology, for example, will help us when it comes to food preservation, okay? When it comes to processing, post-harvest, activities especially. When you employ biotechnology, you are able to handle preservation. You are also able to address the issue of pests and all that might affect your food or your crops once you have produced it. That area, we've not been able to really, really leverage upon biotechnology in this country. We're not even talking about biological modified food yet. No, we are just talking about using biotechnology to improve our agricultural sector. We need to start looking at that. And that is why each time I talk on this program, I always refer to what is happening with our research institutes. That area needs to be looked at. When it comes to technology, you also need to look at mechanization. We're not even talking of this, the advanced mechanization, this medium to small scale mechanization that can help a farmer who is farming or producing from an hectare or maybe just less than an hectare to improve his or her work on a daily basis. So when it comes to little farm implements that can improve productivity, we still don't have it. And that is why I challenge you, go to most farms in Nigeria. You see, because most of these farms are all owned by smallholder farmers, they still use cutlass, they still use hoes. In this time and age, and we're talking about agriculture impacting on economic development, we need to be more serious than this. So in terms of mechanization, technology can come into that. In terms of climate change issues, see, all this we're even talking about, we've not entered the climate change space, how it affects agriculture. How prepared are we? To what extent have we brought in technology, whether it is in weather forecasting or it is in helping farmers to adapt to practices? That area, technology also can come in. And then we talk about having not only planting your crops in the soil, plant your crops in water, okay? Hydroponics, I've spoken about that. And beyond, after hydroponics, you also have aeroponics, where you plant your soil, is not in the water, is not in soil, it's hanging in the air. These are some of the things that we need to start looking at if we want to eventually have agricultural development impacting positively on economic development. So when we bring technology in this way, you also talk about the usage of drones. I think we are beginning to use drones now when it comes to area mapping of farm, farms or knowing farm size or spraying. People are beginning to employ drones to do some of these things that ordinarily somebody puts on knapsack and sprays, a large area of farm. So these are the areas where we also need to support our agricultural production or sector with technology. And here, you bear me witness, it's only individuals, privately owned farms, that you see most of these things operating. When it comes to farmers who are not well-to-do in rural areas, where is the support to be able to push technology to whatever they are doing? And until we begin to do that, we might have issues. And you only say this in a country that doesn't really fund, its agriculture. Unfortunately, as I've always said on your program, when we talk about agriculture, people tend to look at the federal government alone. My argument and my message is always as it concerns state government. Okay, so when I'm making my submissions, it's not necessarily as it concerns the federal government alone, but states. Where states will be able to budget or do better than what the federal government is doing. If federal government is only allocating 1.1% of the national budget to agriculture, what about states like Ondo? What about states like Oyo? What about states like Benue? So we need to start looking at how to bring, technology, and technology, of course, costs money. So when you invest in these kind of things in the agricultural sector, it gives you back. How does it give you back? It gives you employment. Okay, then you have farmers' income improve. When you have farmers or household income improving, you will now see that we don't need to have 70% of our citizens farming or going to agriculture like you have in developed countries. They've gone past the stage of allowing agricultural development to translate into economic development. So now you can say only about 5% of the entire populace is into farming, and that is enough, because it's not just them farming. They also employ technology to help them. So many things are hindering all this kind of progress that we expect to see in Nigeria. You mentioned corruption. So look, I know of a particular state where the state government bought tractors for all the local governments in the state. And what happened to those tractors? The local government chairman sold them out or gave them to their cronies. And when it was time for farmers in communities to come and look for tractor to farm, it was nowhere to be found. So these are the kind of things that keep on hampering, agricultural development and growth in our country. And every now and then we keep on crying that we are food insecure. That is a challenge, that is part of the challenges we are facing.
Indeed. Let's talk about Russia and Ukraine crisis now, which everyone is worried about, and how that would affect price of grains now and the likes of grain, wheat, and all of that. We see a spike in the prices of these commodities. What is happening? What is responsible for this?
Well, that is part of what you get where you don't have agriculture or food production well developed in your country. The Russia-Ukraine war, no one knows when that will come to an end. However, it will affect, just like you mentioned, grain supplies. Where it concerns us the most is, when you look at wheat, because we don't produce wheat that much in the country. And of course, most of what we consume, our children consume, they are wheat-based products. You talk about bread, you talk about biscuits, you talk about the noodles and the likes. So if you have such a shortage in supply in that area, of course, the price goes up. I used to jokingly tell somebody, gone are the days where those who are acting in Nollywood film, we want to portray someone who is suffering and the person is eating bread. No, those days have passed. If you see someone eating bread, you count the person as part of the privileged ones, because the price of bread has gone, sky high because of these shortages. The question I keep on asking, why can't we be self-sufficient in wheat production in Nigeria? What exactly is stopping us? I've analyzed it before on your program. If we look at the 10 states where we can grow wheat in Nigeria, how can we support those states, okay, in the next 10 years, in the next 15 years, so that these states become sufficient, self-sufficient in producing wheat? We have a country that has arable land, about the 10th in order of ranking in the whole world. Why are we suffering in the midst of plenty? So that is part of why we need to I've mentioned it before, that we need to restructure, look again at the agricultural landscape that we have in Nigeria. And we need to do some rejigging. This structure we have and this way of going cannot give us what we want. We cannot get there. So if there's need for us to be self-sufficient and less exposed or vulnerable to the shocks in the international market, it then means that we need to be self-sufficient, especially as it concerns grains.
Before I let you go now, let me ask you a two-in-one question, which I also like you to probably help me answer, if possible, in 2 minutes. First is, what sort of investment should we look at to spur agriculture? And what is your message to whoever becomes Nigeria's CEO? Maybe 1, 2, 3 points to focus on the agricultural space.
Thank you very much. What we need to start looking at, actually, in terms of investment, we've discussed it, is how to invest in technology. Let's improve on how we produce. We cannot keep on producing this way and expect the whole country to be fed by what is coming from farms that are cultivated by using cutlasses and hoes. We need to invest in technology as far as the agricultural space is concerned. I've said this before. For the person who will eventually become the president of the country, I have this advice, that before we start pouring money, once they come in, they need to find a way of galvanizing the agricultural space within the states and align them with what is going on at the federal level. The Minister of Agriculture that will come in needs to work with the Commissioner of Agriculture so that states can give commitments and then regularly they can meet and measure progress, so that what is needed is supplied to states and states can also contribute on their own quota, all in the bid to ensure that agriculture develops and then that impacts positively on our economy.
It's a good way to leave it there. I've been speaking to Dr. Mathew Ojo. He is a researcher and an agribusiness economist. He joined us from the United Kingdom. Thank you so much and do have a great weekend.
Thank you, Tolu.